then we help them in designing their project plan. This is an example of a water project in a community on the outskirts of Kigali, which is the capital of Rwanda. And there, women identified the priority that they were facing was that women had to make about a 4-hour round-trip journey up and down a hill in this mountainous region to collect water from a dirty creek bed. And there was no access to clean water. So this was muddy water to begin with. But if you're a widow who is elderly, or you're physically disabled, perhaps from war, or you have HIV and you are relatively sick and weak, it's very difficult to make that journey every day. And so a business sprung up where men were delivering water on bicycles, but when women couldn't afford to pay, they were sexually exploiting those women in exchange for water. And so this project, with 10 women, they designed a way in which to both collect rainwater and to take water delivery from a truck from the city. And they're now serving 60 households on a daily basis.
Wow.
And this is reaching up to 500 people who no longer have to make a 4-hour round-trip journey. Kids are making it to school on time because they're not spending half their day collecting water. People are washing their clothes in their houses for the first time, because if you're carrying water that far, you're only going to take what you need for cooking. And these women who once were victims of genocide and conflict have now actually become seen as change leaders in their community.
Wow, and what a shift in perspective. Like, you were someone who would have to go into situations that you didn't want to, or perhaps be exploited just for life water. And now you're in a place where you're a leader in your community and you're bringing more resources to the less fortunate than yourself. And there's nothing like giving back to set the stage for all kinds of positive changes to happen. So
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Terrific.
This is a shot of the water delivery, and women collect water in these jerry cans to use both for drinking and bathing and cooking.
Wow, okay, terrific.
This is another group of former sex workers and prostitutes who have chosen to leave their profession but have not yet learned another skill. So this project, called the Meg Foundation School, is another one that we funded, and they are teaching literacy classes, math classes, HIV prevention classes, and also educating the children of these sex workers, while then helping the sex workers learn how to learn sewing so that they could do small sewing projects and earn a new income.
Giving people alternatives, giving people choices, and figuring out, well, what kind of skills do I have? And everyone has skills and inner resources, but if you don't know how to mobilize them, you really can't make a change. But if someone's there to say, okay, what are you good at? How can we help you develop that skill?
And everybody knows something that they can do that they can teach to somebody else. And this is really where most of our projects have leveraged that precise opportunity.
Excellent, excellent. Now, why did you choose women?
Well, women, just like the one standing here behind me in this photograph, are often the ones that bear the primary burden of war and conflict. They're left as widows. They're usually sexually assaulted as part of the military conflict in these parts of Africa, and they're left raising their own children and possibly the orphans of their neighbors. So they begin to rebuild their lives all on their own, and because they are the ones as caretakers of their family, they often also have the greatest insight into what is needed by their communities, their families, and their children. There's a lot of statistics out there that have studied this, but in general, most people will agree that if you give $1 to a woman in those circumstances, she'll spend 93 cents on her children's educational, medicinal, and nutritional needs.
Wow.
And so because she's so dedicated to that level of change, and yet usually has the least access to education, then with just a small amount of training and some resources, she's going to put them to use in the greatest way possible.
Right. So that definitely makes sense. Now, how do you identify which women you want to give money to, and which, because there's obviously so much at stake and so many people in very tremendous need. How do you identify who would be the best candidates to be able to benefit from the money? Because I'm sure there's limited amounts of money.
There is, and we really are trying to find those that are most motivated to create social change. So we have an application process, and we work as well in partnership with community organizations, local NGOs, international nonprofit organizations. to help us in distributing this opportunity. And then we will select those to participate because of their ideas for working for the benefit of women.
Great. And what locations do you target? What communities are you in? What countries are you in Africa?
Well, we started in 2005 with Darfur refugees from Sudan that had fled across the border from that ongoing war and have settled in refugee camps in Chad. We then realized that it was very difficult to work in an unstable political environment. So we decided to work in Rwanda, where it's been 14 years since the genocide took place that killed almost 1 million people in 100 days. And so, though it's been 14 years, there's still a lot of rebuilding that is necessary, and we've been working there since 2006 and are now looking to expand into Uganda.
Wow, okay. Terrific. So in terms of, those are kind of the, those are the locations you're focusing on, and you're focusing on women in that. How did you pick Africa as a country?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because having spent time as a child in the Philippines and traveled extensively in Asia during school and my previous work experience, I thought I would work in Asia. And yet, around the time that I was looking into establishing Global Grassroots, there were two things that influenced me. And the first was that I took a trip to South Africa to learn more about HIV. And I found myself in a one-room shack, metal shack, on the outskirts of Cape Town, talking with this young woman. Now, in South Africa, the incidence of rape is one of the highest in the world. At least it was in 2004. Wow. In South Africa, amongst any country that's not currently at war. And this young woman had decided, when she learned that a 12-year-old girl in her neighborhood had been raped by a 12-year-old boy, she decided, you know, this has to stop. It can't continue into these young generations.
To start at 12 years old, like, what kind of things has that young man been through that he feels compelled to do that?
Exactly. It's horrifying. Now, despite its prevalence, it's still a very taboo topic and issue to address.
Right.
So she's unemployed, she had no resources, she literally scraped together some change to buy some bread so she could offer a meal, and she brought people together to start talking about this. And she'd started with 15 women discussing rape. When I met her about 6 months later, she now had 45 people meeting weekly, including 15 men.
So she's like charismatic, can kind of draw resources and get people together around, to create change. But she sounds like a catalyst for change.
Totally fearless. And I found out she was only 25 years old and had not completed a formal education, but she was going to do something about this issue.
Right. Very passionate.
Absolutely. And I just decided at that moment that if I could support that kind of initiative, then change could happen from the grassroots up.
Right. And it can be small distinctions. It can be like, wow, the way you phrase something, or if I just had this resource, then I could really influence this, which would generate momentum. I mean, we talk a lot here at Unemployment for All about little distinctions can make a big difference. I've had people change words on their resume, and then they get interview after interview after interview. I've had people change the way they do eye contact at interview, and then get job offer after job offer. So it's little distinctions that you're part of to help really kind of be behind the scenes with people, but help them mobilize what they're looking to do.